Hey, it's your buddy Peace and Harmony with you here today, zooming in on a very important topic, and that is how to handle the discard, basically the letting go, the separation relationship from a narcissist or psychopathic individual in your life. I received a very poignant email from a gal who is really kind of initiating or experiencing this process. Whether it's initiated by the narcissist or whether it's initiated by, the other in the environment, in the relationship, the one who has essentially been victimized, the person who's been wounded, the person who's been weakened. It really makes no difference. Really, the goal, though, is to understand really how to process a separation from a relationship with a covert narcissist. Now, this can be very painful for a number of reasons. One, chiefly being that oftentimes these relationships have transpired over years and decades, and in which the person, the individual who we're basically establishing as the one who's been the victim, the supply, the one who's essentially been manipulated by certain control tactics, by certain power tactics, the one who has perhaps learned some new information regarding this narcissist and now has realized that the relationship has not been beneficial, has not served them, and has really discovered, either by exposing them or just really come to an epiphany that the relationship is really not serving them. So this can be a very painful realization. For some, it's very painful, and for others, it's really a sign of relief. So really, the emotion of relief is, of course, going to be more energizing for you, and really the position that you want to try to arrive at. But the focus here is how to handle really the separation smoothly, successfully, and especially from the emotional standpoint. How do you take stock? How do you explain it? How do you really process it? And realize that the separation is, even though it might be devastating, even though it might be really create you almost on the verge of a nervous breakdown, where you feel so bewildered, so really so demoralized, just oh, sorry, got a bee there. Why me? And you start to ask all these questions, which keep you down and keep you analyzing and keep you kind of gyrating in that mode. Yes, those questions do need to occur. In other words, you do need to understand the process, the thinking process of the covert narcissist. So you absolutely positively want to understand that relation dynamic, or that person dynamic, and how they use people, and realize that it's nothing that you did wrong. It's nothing that you could have seen coming. It's due to no weakness of your own. There's nothing that you have essentially could have done to prevent it. It is now kind of in the realization that there are such a type of person as a covert narcissist who actually derives quite a bit of satisfaction from being in a relationship with others who will essentially be very, very decisive, very giving, very sort of taking a lot of the brunt of the relationship in terms of providing the relationship direction. A very strong woman, a very strong hearted, a very strong spirited woman with certain skills and personality traits which are generally very different from that of the covert narcissist. So if you want to think about how these relationships tend to really be long lasting, is because there is a certain type of fit within a covert narcissist, and then essentially a codependent personality type, because one is serving the other in certain respects, but yet there becomes with time a sort of gaping hole or a gaping wound where one is the relationship is not on solid ground. The relationship does not have 2 feet. It's if, one leg is really wounded. The relationship starts to hobble around. There's a certain atrophy of emotional connection with these people. And so that's really, some of the precipitating sort of feeling towards really either exposing or really making the decision to separate from these people. So, when you have discovered this, realize that, you're going through a sort of legitimate suffering. M. Scott Peck in The Road Less Traveled, that really, there has to be a certain sort of legitimate suffering. Otherwise, the evil, the sort of discontent will continue. So until there's actually a legitimate suffering where you're able to actually face it head on, you're able to actually see it through clear eyes, no matter how painful, realizing that, this has been allowed to continue for a long time, where you're taking on so much to the point of exhaustion, to the point where, you're having to make all the decisions, but yet there are certain experiences that you're not receiving from the relationship. There's a certain dynamic that is out of sync, out of connection, out of groove, if you will. So in really working through that discard or that separation successfully, realize absolutely positively that this is extremely important for you to separate from a person who is not beneficial for you. It is coming with the ultimate accepting of this, and that the feeling of depression is essentially a loss of really an image that you thought was there. So oftentimes people who are emerging through and working through these sort of dysfunctional relationships between a narcissist, a psychopath, a covert narcissist, and someone who's codependent, they feel a sort of, depression that they were basically loving a mask or loving what they had thought was this person, when in essence there is another person underneath, which is really there. So I think that is what is most shattering, and that to realize that you now need to come to the self-empowerment point where you really get sort of that centering within yourself and realize, okay, this is very hurtful, but from here I am now entering into a process where I can see many different possibilities before me. And even though it's painful, no matter what stage of life, there's people who are married, into a covert relationship for 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years. I spoke with a gentleman yesterday, 50 years. Okay, that's a long time to suffer. So as you can imagine, the realization of this is going to basically provide a lot of mental whiplash. And I'm going to go into kind of the flashbacks that occur where, the mind is kind of going back to reviewing the relationship and all the things that were said, the things that were done, the injustices, to try to make sense. And then as you begin to replay this, though, realize that your body, this is actually healthy. Your body is working through these. It is processing in order to make sense. But then essentially you're going to need to really work on that vision of possibilities moving forward. So it is essentially like going back to the drawing board. And this is very difficult. And when, the process time, from learning of the exposure or the separation to the revisioning, can take people a whole different variety of times. It is going to take work, and it is work you should absolutely positively embrace and feel good about, because it's going to bring you through. And realize that the vision of how you thought things were going to be in your future, essentially that vision, that crystal vision that you had before you, essentially saying, this is how my life is going to work out. This person is a permanent relationship to me. My children, which I care for and love very much, I want them to have a wonderful upbringing. I want them to have parents who are together. So all these different feelings and emotions that are like toppling over you, and that vision that you held for your future, which is so difficult to let go. But realize that it's essential to let that go, and then re-envision the future, using that same manifesting power that you have to bring great things into your existence. You're going to get need to get a feel for that in the palm of your hand again. So it's very tangible to you physically, tangible to you emotionally, tangible to you spiritually. And realize that that is going to be the goal, where you're going to begin to redirect your life in a healthy and strong emotional manner. But realize that that is your goal. So even if it's hard to focus on that now, remember the essentially law of attraction, the law of how the universe works, is we get what we focus on. So, yes, processing the difficulty and loss of that relationship. You do need to go through M. Scott Peck calls legitimate suffering, going through that, processing it, grieving that relationship, and then eventually you will come to that feeling of acceptance, and then being able to come to your power and then move on with a new vision and new future, where you are able to be the strong and emotionally cohesive, congruent person that you are, and not torn apart through dissatisfaction and conflict, but that you're emerging whole, integrity, strong, with a clearly defined future and goal. And those are then articulated, as we've described in some previous videos, that you actually write down in your recovery journal. You're getting more of a sense of how you want to become, the person that you want to be, the things that you want to have, the things that you want to create in your life. And then taking stock of the lessons learned, so you have that in your repertoire, and then going and then nurturing those and keeping those absolutely positively in your past, so that those will come to be, and you'll be able to heal inside from the abuse, manipulation tactics that had ensued previously. Peace and harmony with you here today. I hope these videos help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussions, and support.